Hello and welcome to Wednesday Warfare, where I review NXT and AEW Dynamite back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Before getting into the Wednesday shows, though, I do want to go on a bit of a tangent here. If you don't want to hear what I have to say, skip ahead to this time code, but I want to talk for a minute about NWA Power, which airs every Tuesday evening on their YouTube channel. I've had a few people over the last couple of weeks ask me to give my thoughts on the show. Here's the thing, I don't plan on reviewing NWA Power on a regular basis on this channel, primarily because this is what I consider my recreational wrestling. There's a lot of wrestling I watch for work purposes, but there's also some I try and watch just for me as a fan, where I can disconnect from the work aspect of this and just try and enjoy the wrestling product as it is without having to be too over-analytical about it. But simply put, I believe that NWA Power is unlike anything else out there today for all the best reasons. It's so different and refreshing to see compared to everything else out there, because we live in an era right now where all these different companies claim to be alternatives to WWE, but ultimately what they want to do is just their own version of what that company does with different budgets and different results. Whereas NWA is going in this completely different direction, where they want to strip everything down in terms of the production and the glitz and the glamour, and really what shines is the talent. They found a format that's truly different from everything else, and what's really impressive is they didn't have to reinvent the wheel or think outside the box or get too cute with trying to do something a little different. All they had to do was go back to basics, this really lovely throwback to the old studio style of wrestling programming from the days of yore, with just the new talent and kind of a new style in the ring, trying to find that hybrid. Now, I've said before that, going back to the past doesn't really work for long-term success for a company, but at least in the short term right now, they're trying to build off of the past instead of just trying to exactly replicate what used to work note for note. Like I said, it's a combination of the throwback, the stuff from the old era, and the new talent of today. So I think they have a nice thing going here, and like I said, everyone feels authentic. All the promos, they seem like they come from the heart. Everything just feels like nothing's scripted. If anything, they're probably given bullet points, and it just feels real. It just feels genuine and authentic, which I think we're missing in a lot of our wrestling today across multiple companies. But the point of what I'm trying to get at is, if you have not watched NWA Power, go do yourself a favor and check it out. Each episode's only an hour long. It's a really great escape from everything else out there, and like I said, it's a great alternative in a world of wannabe alternatives. This is it for you. And so take an hour out of your week every week on Tuesdays. Check it out. That's my piece, and let's get on with the reviews. NXT begins with Tommaso Ciampa making his in-ring return against Angel Garza. It's Ciampa's first match back since giving up the NXT Championship earlier this year to address his neck injury. I think the timetable for his return's been absolutely bonkers. They say he was supposed to come back up to a year being gone, but he came back in like 6 or 7 months. And we've seen this a lot with a lot of injuries in the whole company, where people are supposed to be out for a year and a half, and they come back in like 3 months or something ridiculous like that. It makes you think like it's like they're almost daring the wrestlers to come back sooner. It's like, yeah, it could take you up to a year to come back from this neck injury if you're a pussy. It's a pretty short and sweet matchup here. Ciampa not only does the stomps in the corner and the running knee lift to Garza, but also Garza's precious tearaway pants. Ciampa wins with the Willow's Bell, that drape over DDT from the ropes. A pretty decisive victory here. Ciampa looks to be in good form in his first match back in 7 months. I'm looking forward to seeing how he will perform later on in those longer matches he was so well known for, especially at the height of his run as NXT champion. After the match, though, the Undisputed Era show up and they surround the ring, and while that's going on, Kyle O'Reilly tosses Mauro Ranallo like a USB thumb drive, telling him to check it out. And so what could this mean? And then the Era walks off. After the commercial break, we see what was on the thumb drive, and it's footage of the Undisputed Era they're standing over a battered and beaten Velveteen Dream. He was supposed to be challenging Roderick Strong for the North American title the following week, but now his status is unknown. We'll find out what happens to him later in the night. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to go about showing a replay. It's very like new technology. About 10-15 years ago it would have been like a VHS or a DVD. Now it's like, ooh, thumb drives, very sexy. Next match sees Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch taking on Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel of Imperium. I have to admit, I went into this match semi-blind. I'm not familiar with Imperium's work. I don't watch NXT UK. Outside of having seen a few Walter matches, I don't know much about the work of the rest of the guys, whereas I am more familiar with Team CAW from their action on NXT in the last year or so. But I have to admit, this is a really impressive physical match by both teams. They both really brought it here. Ultimately, Imperium wins with the European bomb, the power bomb, European uppercut combination. You know, it was a good physical match. Ultimately, though, like, these two teams don't really do much for me in the long term. Like, these are two good teams for, like, the work rate fans, like what NXT is kind of about. But I will take teams with charisma and personality any day, even if their work rate isn't as good. Like, you know, I'll take Breezango or Heavy Machinery over Team Snug. We get a hype package for Johnny Gargano, just in case you forgot he's NXT for life. And then we go to a backstage interview with him, and he's asked about, you know, what's his feelings about Tommaso Ciampa coming back. And he says, I don't know what to make of Ciampa until I see him face to face next time. You know, we did see these two guys, former best friends turn, you know, blood rivals, kind of seeing a rekindling of their partnership in the last several weeks before Ciampa had to give up the title due to injury. So will we see more of this rekindling of DIY now that they're both healthy again? Time will tell. Io Shirai takes on Caden Carter. Another short and sweet matchup, one of many you'll find on this show, actually. Io wins pretty handily with a German suplex and her moonsault. Afterwards, she gets to the mic and says, I don't want Rhea, I don't want Bianca, I want Shayna Baszler. But then she's cut off as she's talking by Rhea Ripley, who then warns Io to keep her name out of her mouth. That's Rhea's name out of Io's mouth. Pronouns, pal. Io talks trash for a bit before she backs out of the ring. It's a good little segment. It gets Rhea over strong as a competitor, and it keeps Rhea's presence fresh in everyone's minds as she's one of the likely next challengers for Shayna Baszler's title. GM William Regal's in the crow's nest. He announces that Velveteen Dream is out of action following the big beatdown by the Undisputed Era. He won't be able to challenge Roderick Strong for the title next week, but the winner of this next match will, as Keith Lee takes on Dominic Dijakovic. This match was announced weeks ago, but they've just now, at the very last moment, added this #1 contender stipulation. And if you've seen these guys in their battles in the last several weeks, the fact they went 1-1 against each other, they each have a win, a loss, and a draw. This is the rubber match. You know, if you can see in your mind what they did before, this is no exception. More of the same from these guys. Great action. An insane reverse Rana by Keith Lee coming out of the corner, which I think he plants himself. He spikes himself pretty badly before Dominic takes any impact, though. They go to the top rope again, and then Roderick Strong comes in, beats them both up. The bell rings. He thinks he's outsmarted everyone. Where have we seen this before? But predictably, GM Regal says, you know, next week, Roderick, you're going to defend that North American Championship against both these guys. So joke's on you. And Roderick's all upset. How can I not seen this coming? I don't know, Roderick. Maybe because we've seen this 100 times before. Maybe you could have asked your stablemate, Adam Cole, what happened last year when he was North American Champion and he beat up Pete Dunne and Ricochet, who were fighting for #1 contendership, because that turned into a triple threat match. It's such a familiar hack move. So the match itself was enjoyable, except for the bullshit finish that we've seen 100 times before. Matt Riddle versus Bronson Reed up next. You know, it's another good little showing by both guys, and more impressive strength from Riddle. He ultimately wins with the Bro Derek. They shake hands. Yay, sportsmanship. We get a health update on Kushida. Apparently last week versus Walter, he broke a bone in his hand, so he's going to be out of action for about a month, or in WWE time, maybe like 3 or 4 days. But then our next match sees Tanara Conti going against Tegan Knox, who's making her long-awaited return to the ring after a pair of back-to-back, you know, debilitating knee injuries over the last couple of years or so. So she ultimately done a pretty short match, kind of an enhancement match, basically. Tegan wins with the shiniest of wizards to win the thing, and she gets a nice congratulatory hug from her friend Dakota Kai after the match. She's about to be interviewed about the win. She can't even get a word out before Shayna Baszler and friends show up. And so then Shayna basically belittles Tegan for her little win. You know, you're not ready for a championship match yet, and neither are you, Dakota, while we're on the subject. So it seems there's a real interesting gumbo going on with the women's title picture right now. A lot of different people involved, because you already have Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Io Shirai's throwing her name in, and now you've got maybe Tegan Knox and maybe Dakota Kai as well. Lots of interesting ways this could go. We know that next week we're going to see Rhea versus Bianca in singles action, and so we're going to see how this all shakes down in the end. But the fact that, you know, Shayna is getting involved with so many different ladies at once makes me think, you know, something crazy could happen. We get a pre-taped Finn Balor promo where he says that next week his future will be his past. Then in our next match, Killian Dain takes on Boa. This is a follow-up to last week when Dain beat the hell out of Boa after his match with Cameron Grimes. So more of the same here. Vicious heel beatdown. Dain hits 3 consecutive Vader bombs and then ends the match with a stretching submission that makes Boa tap out. So Dain looking very vicious here. A nice bit of a recovery after his feud with Matt Riddle that he ended up only losing end of. Quick side note though, in the whole show, we see Io Shirai cutting a promo in the ring in English, though with an accent, and then you've got Boa cutting a promo in his native Mandarin. And with each of these people, and with like no one else who cuts a promo tonight, you hear these what chants for the non-native English speakers, which comes off super insensitive, guys. Come on, Full Sail, you can do better than that. In your main event, Pete Dunne takes on Damian Priest. This goes back to a couple of weeks ago when Priest beat down Pete Dunne after Pete's match with Danny Burch. And as Pete Dunne makes his entrance, he gets into it with Killian Dain. He does the finger snap thing and he moves on. This is a really high quality match here. These two just give each other everything they got here. It's very evenly matched, lots of back and forth. They're trading submissions, they're trading flying moves, what have you. Ultimately, Priest hits a low blow while the referee can't see, just have a good vantage point there, and Damian hits the Reckoning to win. I think it's kind of an upset here based on the way they've booked Pete Dunne pretty consistently in the last couple of years since the first UK title tournament. You know, with a couple of losses like here and there, he's been booked very strong. And so just for Damian, who's still relatively new to NXT, to get this win, albeit a dirty win against Pete Dunne, is just, I think it's a huge stepping stone for him. I think it puts him up in that kind of star status almost instantly in NXT. So strong way to make him look like the evil heel. You know, I mean, he'll get his receipt later on, but it's a great first, I think probably his first real huge win here in NXT. Dynamite opens up with a match for the AEW Tag Title Tournament as Kazarian and Daniels of SCU are supposed to take on the Best Friends, but as SCU make their entrance, the Lucha Brothers arrive. They jump them from behind. Penta hits a cradle piledriver on Daniels on the ramp. Scorpio Sky chases them off, but the damage has already been done. Daniels is carried off on a stretcher by EMTs. They say he suffers a stinger when they announce it later in the night, but Scorpio Sky is a last-minute replacement. He's not dressed to wrestle, but he does a pretty good job in street clothes anyway. At one point, midway through the match, he actually loses one of his shoe. There's a "he has one shoe" chant. He then takes off the other shoe, which then gets a "he has no shoes" chant. It's a really fun opening matchup. The Best Friends are able to combine their humor and also their athleticism, and, you know, Scorpio and Kazarian are no slouches themselves. Ultimately, the match ends when SCU hits this powerbomb dropkick combo on Trent. It doesn't look 100% great, but they win the match nonetheless. They're advancing to take on Dark Order next week in the tournament. Santana and Ortiz of the Inner Circle taking on John Silver and Alex Reynolds up next. Now, these two guys are the local talent. It's a pretty big squash match. They are disposed of pretty quickly with a street sweeper, but they have been getting a lot of work lately. I think it was a few weeks ago on either Raw or SmackDown, I can't remember which, but they were used as enhancement talent on that show as well. I recognize those tights from anywhere, but like I said, the team formerly known as LAX win the matchup, and then afterwards, Le Champion, Chris Jericho, is on the big screen to congratulate them, and then on their behalf, he challenges the Young Bucks to a match against Santana and Ortiz for Full Gear. That's a match that will likely happen because once a challenge is made, yeah, it's probably going to happen anyway. So that's how it ends. It basically gets Santana and Ortiz over. It's their first proper 2-on-2 tag match since being signed with AEW. So yeah, good first showing for these guys. We got a high package for Cody Rhodes as he's getting ready for the fight of his life against Chris Jericho for the title at Full Gear. Near the end of the package, DDP quotes Dusty Rhodes and saying, "It's not real until you've won your first world championship." And I guess we're just going to ignore the fact that Cody's already won the Ring of Honor and NWA World Heavyweight Championships. Riho defends the AEW Women's title against Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. This is a great match. You know, I think one of Riho's greatest qualities as a wrestler is she can sell a beating like almost nobody else, but she's able to stay resilient and keep fighting back. Ultimately, Baker looks to have Riho in the lockjaw. That's her Rings of Saturn Mandible Claw combo. But Riho, ever the wily one, she actually leans back, rolls Britt up to pin and retain the championship. It's like I said, really strong match for Riho here. I think it's really interesting because next week they're promoting, Dr. Britt Baker is going to be in her hometown next week in Pittsburgh. And it's like, wouldn't it make more sense to hype her up there as the incoming champion, but now she's lost a match? Like, what are you going to do to have her a rebound from that, I wonder? Next match in the AEW Tag Title Tournament sees the Jurassic Express taking on the Lucha Brothers. This week, though, the combination is Marco Stunt and Jungle Boy. You don't see Luchasaurus because apparently he suffered an eye injury. I think it's interesting they didn't announce that injury on like social media before the show began. It's kind of a last minute change that wasn't really announced. Marco and Jungle Boy, they're definitely the underdogs here, especially Marco because of his size, but I just love to see Marco like do his thing, the way he can like flits about everyone like he's a little bird doing all his flipping and spinning around. It's really cool to see. Like I say, the Jurassic Express, great underdogs here. They put up a really good fight against the Lucha Brothers, but ultimately they fall after a double stomp, cradle piledriver combo onto Marco for Penta and Rey Fenix to advance. They will be taking on Private Party in the semifinals, and the way this thing's been going the last few weeks with the Lucha Brothers getting involved in SCU's promo on the stage last week, then jumping them from behind this week and everything, seems to me they're really telegraphing a finals match between SCU and the Lucha Brothers for the tag titles. Time will tell though. Two pairs of rivals make for some interesting teams up next as Jon Moxley and Pac take on Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. Terrific pre-match promo in the picture-in-picture by Moxley in the stands before the show officially begins. Great match here. I think Hangman Page over the last couple of weeks has really regained some of his mojo from that he lost in the build to All Out against Chris Jericho. I think that push he had was really kind of maligned in a lot of ways. People weren't really getting behind him, but now the pressure's off. I think he's doing a lot better. Like I mentioned a week or two ago on this segment, I think he's finally he's getting back into his groove. It's improving. I think his reactions that he's getting from audiences during his entrances and during his matches is getting a lot better over time. But yeah, great match here. Great stuff between Omega and Moxley in this matchup here. A bit of a preview of what's to come for Full Gear. And they actually get their barbed wire weapons out once again. The referee is like having to turn himself away as Moxley hits Omega in the gut with the butt of the bat. But then Pac takes the barbed wire weapons away from both guys, just saying, "What are you doing? Get your mind right." Then Moxley hits the double deuce, hits him with a DDT, and walks away. So he leaves Pac hanging high and dry, and Omega and Page pick the scraps pretty easily. It's Pac's first loss in AEW, so kind of significant in that way. But yeah, great story here. Good job by all four guys telling their stories and building their respective feuds up for the pay-per-view. In your main event, it's a Philadelphia street fight as Chris Jericho defends the AEW World Title against Darby Allin, one of the fastest rising stars in All Elite Wrestling right now. And Jericho makes Darby look like $1 million in this match. As far as like street fights go, it's not the most violent that you've ever seen. Like, it's actually pretty tame by like street fight standards. I think Darby's seen a lot worse, and I think Jericho's too for that matter. But I think this one's kind of scaled back in a way. But at one point, Jericho like tapes Darby's hands behind his back, and Darby's still able to do so many incredible moves onto Jericho, all these dives and flips and everything. He and Orange Cassidy would make a phenomenal tag team. Two guys who can do a bunch of stuff without even taking their hands out of their pockets. Darby looks to go for one more flying move, but Jake Hager comes out of nowhere, decks Darby right in the mush, and that allows Jericho to hit the walls of Jericho, get that locked in. And so the referee has no choice but to call the match for Jericho, so he retains there. The rest, the inner circle, that's Santana, Ortiz, and Sammy Guevara, they show up with a little bit of the bubbly, and they all celebrate in the ring to close out the show. And despite the loss, like I said, Darby is a total star now. Like, some people might not see it because of his physique and everything, but, this guy has organically become like one of the biggest names in AEW right now. He's so fun to watch in so many ways. And like I said, he looked so good in this match. Jericho made him look so strong, especially in the big comeback where he has this flurry of offense while he has no use of his hands. Like, who else could possibly do that and make it look so captivating and almost like, oh my God, he's like possibly going to win this one. It was very impressive, but yeah, I think Darby's looking good despite the loss. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, NXT or AEW Dynamite. This is kind of a toss-up for me, this one, because I think neither show really knocked it out of the park, per se, but I think that both shows had a lot to offer, had a lot of strengths, and did things in their own ways. Ultimately, though, I'm going to give this one to AEW once again, third week in a row. I think here's the difference maker with this one. AEW didn't do anything to piss me off. NXT, however, did something to piss me off with the ending of that Keith Lee Dijakovic match. Because I'm sure the triple threat match next week's going to be great. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun. But would it have killed them to have a decisive winner in that match and just have a blow off to that feud between the two big men before they got to have this, oh, we got to put the title, we have to get the title incorporated as well. So that part really stuck in my craw. Also, I don't know why, the commentary at NXT was particularly grating for me this week. I think it was Morrow's real excessive overuse of his 2-bit words. He likes to do it, but this one felt especially excessive. And then I think Beth Phoenix, her delivery for a lot of the things just felt like she was reading straight from a cue card. Like in some of them, I think it was in the Lee Dijakovic match where she's like just going like, these guys are just giving everything here. Like her delivery, you have to go back and listen to this thing because it just sounds like she's reading from a script and she's got no real emotion behind it. She has like one setting and she's just like doing that all the time. And it just kind of got grating on me after a while. I think that was kind of a deciding factor as well. It was like the commentary with, Shivani and JR and Excalibur felt a lot fresher and a lot more, alive in its own way and a little less bottled, so to speak, than what we see in NXT. And that might be a recurring issue. Hopefully, I'm not going to try and make that part of the decision-making factor every week, but for some reason this week it stuck out to me just how like grating Mauro Ranallo and Beth Phoenix as a duo were, and Nigel McGuinness was there too. But let me know what you thought about AEW and NXT this week in the comments section below, and vote for which show you thought was better by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.